Welcome to the Moonlit Library, a quiet place where stories are told slowly, candles burn softly, and the night invites the mind to rest. Tonight, we begin with one of the most beloved places in fantasy, Hogwarts, a castle known for magic, friendship, and belonging. But what if the promise of belonging began with a question about who truly belonged? Long before the first student arrived, before the sorting hat spoke its first word, 4 founders stood together with a shared dream. And within that dream lived a disagreement that would quietly shape the castle for centuries. So dim the lights. Get comfortable and let your thoughts drift gently tonight as we explore the hidden design of Hogwarts. Night has settled over Hogwarts. The castle rests quietly beneath a sky of drifting stars. Ancient towers rise into the darkness, their windows glowing softly like distant lanterns. Within those old stone walls, centuries of stories continue to whisper through the halls. For generations, Hogwarts has been known as a place of belonging, a sanctuary where young witches and wizards arrive uncertain and slowly discover who they might become. A school where identity seems to reveal itself as naturally as magic. Yet beneath that comforting promise, a quieter question has always lingered. A question that began long before the first student ever walked through the castle gates. A question about who truly belonged in the first place. Long ago, Hogwarts was shaped by 4 remarkable minds. 4 founders, each brilliant, each visionary, each convinced. They understood how the future of magic should unfold. Godric Gryffindor believed courage would guide the path forward. Helga Hufflepuff believed loyalty and fairness would hold the school together. Rowena Ravenclaw trusted wisdom and curiosity to illuminate the future. And Salazar Slytherin believed magic should be protected, guarded carefully from a world that might misunderstand it. Each belief carried its own truth. Yet when such powerful convictions stand beside one another, agreement is rarely simple. Slowly and almost quietly, a disagreement began to grow. Not a dramatic betrayal, not a sudden collapse. Something softer, something deeper, a fracture, subtle in appearance, yet lasting in consequence. Gryffindor believed the school should welcome all who possessed magical ability. Hufflepuff believed dedication and fairness mattered most. Ravenclaw believed intelligence and curiosity should guide admission. But Slytherin feared something different. He feared that magic, if shared too freely, might one day be weakened, or worse, misused. Because preservation, when carried far enough, does not simply protect. It begins to control. None of the founders were simple figures. They were visionaries. And visionaries build from convictions strong enough to echo long after they are gone. At first, their debate seemed practical. a question of admissions. Who should be welcomed into the school? Who should be trusted with the knowledge it contained? Yet beneath that simple question, something heavier moved quietly. Survival, legacy, identity. Eventually, Salazar Slytherin left the castle. But the disagreement did not leave with him. It could not. Instead, it settled quietly into the traditions of the school itself, into ritual, into ceremony, into the very first moment every young student would one day experience. Imagine the great hall on that opening night. Candles drift slowly through the air, their golden light reflecting against ancient stone. Long tables are filled with waiting faces, some excited, some nervous, all uncertain about the future ahead. A small student steps forward and sits upon a simple wooden stool. Their hands rest quietly at its edges. An old hat is lowered slowly over thoughts not yet fully formed. The hall grows silent. A moment of stillness settles across the room. Then a single word is spoken, a house is chosen. And with that word, the next 7 years quietly begin to take shape. The hall erupts with applause. It feels joyful, it feels magical, and yet something subtle has already happened. Identity has been named before it is fully understood. Do children grow naturally into those words? Or does the structure of the school slowly grow around them? Most of us were told who we were long before we had the language to decide who we might become. And somewhere within us, that early verdict still echoes quietly. Hogwarts simply made that moment ceremonial. Founders once argued about belonging, and the school that followed transformed belonging into its first act of division. Houses became banners. Banners became loyalties. Loyalties became inheritance. And inheritance can shape far more than we realize. What if the sorting hat does not simply reveal potential, but gently guides it? What if choice feels free while the structure quietly defines its edges? The banners still hang within the great hall. Points still accumulate. Rivalries awaken each year. And beneath the celebration, the original question remains: who truly belongs? That question never disappeared. Instead, it settled into the stones of the castle, into its corridors, into the quiet spaces between tradition and choice. Because some disagreements are not accidents of history. They become foundations, and foundations do not disappear, they carry weight. They shape movement. They determine where the future may one day crack. If we follow that weight carefully beneath ceremony and tradition, we begin to see Hogwarts differently, not only as a sanctuary for learning, but as a system still carrying the quiet imprint of its creator's unresolved beliefs. The argument never truly ended. It simply became architecture, and architecture once built quietly shapes everyone who walks inside. The castle breathed long before its students did. Ancient stone has a memory. Every archway, every corridor, every quiet staircase carries the weight of choices made long ago. And among those choices, one in particular left a mark that even centuries could not fully erase. Salazar Slytherin's departure from Hogwarts was not dramatic. There were no farewell banners, no speeches echoing through the great hall, no final gathering beneath the enchanted ceiling. There was only absence, quiet, deliberate, final, and yet absence has its own kind of weight. It settles slowly into foundations, into the architecture meant to guide and protect, and in time it becomes part of the structure itself. Imagine the great hall late in the evening. Dinner has ended. The enchanted ceiling dims gently toward night. Candles drift quietly in the air. The long tables sit beneath a soft and thoughtful silence. Students wait, watching, wondering. A small figure steps forward, hands resting carefully on the wooden stool. An old hat is lowered slowly over thoughts not yet fully formed. The room grows still. A pause settles across the hall. Then a single word is spoken, one word that quietly shapes the next 7 years of a young life. Childhood narrows into direction, and the hall erupts with applause, celebration, magic, joy. Yet beneath that moment of triumph, something quieter has already taken place, something irreversible. What happens when identity is named before it is truly understood? Do children grow into those words, or does the structure around them begin to grow instead? Most of us were told who we were long before we had the language to decide who we might become. Hogwarts simply made that moment ceremonial. The founders once argued about belonging, and the school that followed transformed belonging into its first act of division. Houses became banners, banners became loyalties, loyalties became inheritance, and inheritance is powerful. Here is a quieter thought. What if the sorting hat does not simply reveal potential, but gently guides it? What if choice feels free while the structure quietly defines its edges? A child may step forward with endless possibilities, yet the hat listens carefully. It hears echoes of Gryffindor's courage, Hufflepuff's loyalty, Ravenclaw's curiosity, Slytherin's ambition. And somewhere in that silent conversation, the school decides not only who the student is, but who they may never become. The consequences are subtle, almost invisible. Children grow, houses form, traditions deepen. Students explore the castle's corridors. They learn spells. They form friendships. They discover who they believe themselves to be. And beneath it all, the unresolved disagreement of the founders continues to hum quietly within the walls, shaping alliances, guiding rivalries, influencing the quiet power each house carries.
Over time, patterns begin to appear. Some students become bolder than expected. Others grow quieter than they once were. Some are pushed forward, others held gently back, not by intention but by inheritance. The weight of the past is rarely visible at first, but eventually a moment of clarity arrives, a whisper of understanding, a quiet realization. Hogwarts is not only a school, it is a living system, one built from both idealism and fear. And if that system continues to operate, year after year, sorting, weighing, guiding, then the founder's question was never only a question of history. It is a question asked again each time a new student enters the hall. Tonight, as we wander through these quiet corridors in thought, we begin to notice something subtle, an invisible hand shaping the rhythm of the castle. From the sorting hat to the hidden passages, from points written upon a board to friendships formed in quiet corners of the library. The legacy of the founders was never written only on parchment. It was written into the rhythm of the castle itself. And if we follow that rhythm carefully, we begin to see something lingering just beneath the surface. A quiet intention, waiting patiently for the right eyes to notice it, and perhaps for the story to begin again. The disagreement between the founders did not disappear when Salazar Slytherin left the castle. It simply changed its shape. Some disagreements fade with time. Others sink deeper, settling quietly beneath the surface. And when something cannot remain in the open, it is often built below, deep beneath the castle's ancient foundations, far below the moving staircases and torchlit corridors. A hidden chamber waited. Not a room born from anger, not a place created in haste, but a space designed with intention, carefully concealed, patiently preserved. While the other founders shaped classrooms and towers, while they built halls of learning and rituals of belonging, Slytherin prepared something different, a contingency, not for his own time but for a future he did not entirely trust. That distinction matters, because the Chamber of Secrets was never meant to be discovered quickly. It was meant to wait, and stone, when given time, can wait for centuries. Above the chamber, generations of students lived their lives. They walked the corridors. They studied spells beneath candlelight. They laughed in common rooms. They forged friendships that would last a lifetime. To them, the castle felt whole, complete, secure. Yet beneath their footsteps, something unfinished endured. The chamber was not built for rage. Rage burns too quickly. The chamber was built for patience. It was designed to awaken only when certain conditions were met, when ideology found a willing voice, when fear returned in a familiar shape. And that is the unsettling part. While the hidden chamber slept beneath the stone, the system above continued its quiet work. Each year students arrived. Each year they were sorted. Each year identities were named, defined, celebrated, reinforced. Meanwhile, the structure below remained dormant, not gone, simply waiting, preserved like a sealed letter written long ago for a future reader. So what does it mean when a school is built with a hidden mechanism of exclusion at its core? Not metaphorically, but literally. A basilisk does not invent belief. It obeys it, which means the true inheritance of the chamber was never the creature itself. It was the authority behind it. Authority carved quietly into architecture. Permission passed through bloodlines and whispers. A command waiting patiently for the right voice to speak it. Centuries later, when that voice finally returned, the castle did not collapse in surprise. Instead, it responded. Hidden paths revealed themselves. Walls shifted. Doors opened, just as they had been designed to do. Because systems built with contingency rarely forget their purpose. They remember, and the students who walked those corridors rarely saw the full design. They traced serpents carved into the stone, mistaking inheritance for decoration. Above ground there were banners, house points, tradition, and beneath it all, a preserved conviction quietly waiting. Two philosophies sharing the same foundation. If identity is shaped early, if belonging becomes ritual, if division becomes structure, then what happens when fear discovers a system already prepared for it? The chamber was never simply a room. It was preservation. And in architecture, burial is not disappearance. It is survival. By the time the chamber fell silent once again, most of the castle had already forgotten it. Secrets have a curious way of fading from memory, especially when they are no longer required. Because the quiet truth is this: systems do not always need hidden rooms to continue their work. Once a structure settles deeply enough into everyday life, it begins to move through routine instead, through habits, through expectations, through the small patterns people follow without even noticing. Each year, new students arrive at Hogwarts. They step through the great doors unsure of who they might become, their futures still wide and undefined. For a brief moment, possibility stretches in every direction. But before uncertainty has time to breathe, a name is spoken. Brave, loyal, clever, ambitious. The words sound celebratory, and in many ways they are. But identity declared in public rarely remains neutral for long. It gathers expectation, and expectation has gravity. Slowly and gently, a student begins to lean toward the shape that has been given to them. Not forced, not commanded, simply guided. A Gryffindor learns what courage is supposed to look like. A Ravenclaw learns how intelligence should sound. A Hufflepuff begins to understand the quiet strength of patience. A Slytherin senses that ambition is noticed, perhaps a little more carefully than the others. No rule demands these things. No decree enforces them. The structure does not need to, because systems rarely push directly. Instead, they reward alignment and quietly question deviation. And so the inheritance of the founders continues, not through monsters hidden in the dark, but through habits carried in the light, through traditions repeated each year, through stories told and retold in common rooms, through the quiet belief that certain paths belong to certain people. In time, the chamber beneath the castle becomes unnecessary. Its logic already lives above. Students are sorted before they are fully known, and belonging arrives wrapped neatly in certainty. It feels natural. It feels safe. It feels right. That is how architecture survives, not by force, but by becoming invisible. And when someone drifts beyond the edges of their assigned place, the system rarely breaks. Instead, it tilts gently back into balance. A small remark might appear, soft, almost affectionate. That is not very like you. A simple sentence, yet hidden inside it is a quiet boundary, a reminder of where expectation believes you belong. Long ago, the founders argued about who should be admitted to their school. The solution the castle eventually embraced was simple. Everyone would belong somewhere. And once that answer felt normal, the original tension faded from view. The chamber beneath the castle sleeps, its doors sealed, its creature long defeated. But the architecture that surrounds it continues its quiet work. If architecture can guide identity, then an interesting question begins to appear. What can interrupt architecture? What can gently push against the quiet weight of expectation? The answer is rarely dramatic. It is not force, not rebellion, not spectacle. More often, it is something much quieter. Choice. There is a reason one headmaster remains such a powerful presence in the memory of Hogwarts. Not because he commanded the castle, not because he controlled its systems, but because he reminded students of something simple, something quietly radical, that who we become depends less on our abilities and far more on the choices we make. In a school built upon sorting, that idea carries surprising weight, because choice inside a structure is never effortless. It presses gently against expectation. Sometimes the moment is small. A student hesitates beneath the sorting hat. A quiet thought interrupts certainty. A whispered request asks the hat to reconsider.
Suddenly, the ritual reveals something important. It was never completely absolute. The hat listens. It considers. It negotiates. And in that quiet conversation between mind and tradition, something subtle appears. Influence. The structure offers pressure, but it does not remove possibility. A brave student may choose restraint instead of glory. An ambitious student may choose loyalty instead of advantage. An intelligent student may trust instinct rather than analysis. A patient student may refuse silent endurance. Each of these choices seems small, almost invisible against the scale of ancient stone. But systems depend on predictability, and unpredictability reveals their edges. When someone grows beyond the simple shape assigned to them, the design of the system becomes visible, not broken, but exposed. The founders built walls. The school organized belonging. The traditions guided behavior. Yet within those walls, students still surprise the design. And perhaps that is the quiet truth that moves through the castle's corridors. Architecture can guide identity, but it cannot complete it. Stone may shape the path. Tradition may narrow the choices. Expectation may press gently against possibility. Yet something remains beyond those pressures. Decision. Long ago, a basilisk slept beneath the castle. Its gaze could petrify bodies and turn movement into stillness. Structure can do something similar. It can slowly petrify possibility, turn identity into something rigid, predictable, permanent. But neither stone nor system can survive one thing for very long: sustained choice. Because every time a student decides differently, the architecture must adjust. And slowly, almost invisibly, the shape of the castle begins to change. By now, the castle feels different. The corridors seem a little quieter, the towers a little older, and the story we began with starts to reveal something deeper. What if the castle was never divided by accident? What if the fracture between its founders was not a mistake waiting to be repaired, but a tension meant to be carried? 4 founders once stood at the beginning of this story. 4 minds united by a shared dream. A dream of a place where magic could be studied, protected, and passed to the next generation. Yet beneath that shared dream, another truth quietly existed. Each founder carried a different fear. Instead of resolving those fears, they built around them. Stone rose into towers. Great halls stretched beneath enchanted ceilings. Rituals were established. Students were welcomed. And slowly the school began to grow. But the disagreement never disappeared. It settled into permanence, like a quiet fault line beneath the earth. Invisible most of the time, yet always present. For centuries, Hogwarts has appeared unified. Students dine beneath the same ceiling. They study the same spells. They walk the same corridors. Banners from different houses hang together in shared air. And yet unity and division have always lived side by side within those walls. The Chamber of Secrets was only the most dramatic expression of that division, a visible reminder of a deeper tension. And even after the chamber fell silent, the quieter inheritance remained. We have followed that inheritance carefully, through architecture, through rituals repeated each year, through traditions that shape identity long before it is fully understood. We have seen how structure can guide behavior, how belonging can comfort, how labels can quietly narrow possibility, and how choice can gently resist those pressures. When all these forces are viewed together, the fracture between the founders begins to look different. It no longer feels like a wound buried in history. Instead, it feels like a question that has never stopped being asked. How do you build a place of belonging without defining its limits? How do you protect a vision without preserving the fear that first created it? The founders never fully answered those questions. Instead, they placed them into stone, into ritual, into tradition, and they allowed time to continue the conversation. Each year, when a student sits beneath the sorting hat, that conversation begins again. Not between houses, not between bloodlines, but between something deeper, between structure and self. Perhaps that is why the castle endures, not because it solved its disagreement, but because it learned to contain it. Within its walls, unity and division remain in quiet conversation, neither side collapsing completely into the other. And perhaps that balance is part of the castle's deeper magic. Not the magic of spells or potions, not the magic of hidden chambers or enchanted staircases, but the quieter magic of an institution that carries both conviction and doubt. The basilisk was defeated. The chamber was sealed. Yet the architecture remained. The sorting continued. And within that structure, students continued to choose. The fracture never disappeared, but over time it stopped being only a wound. It became something else, a question. And questions, unlike stone, are never truly finished. At this point in the story, it would be easy to leave the castle behind, to allow Hogwarts to remain what it first appeared to be, a place of towers and enchanted ceilings, of ancient stone and floating candles, a story contained safely within its own walls. But stories endure for a reason. They linger because they echo beyond themselves. And the quiet tension within Hogwarts feels familiar. Not because we have walked its corridors, but because we recognize its design. Many institutions begin the same way. They are born from conviction, built to protect something valuable, organized around belonging, and in time they begin to sort, to label, to define where people stand, often with the best of intentions. Schools, workplaces, communities, even nations. Each one carries the fingerprints of those who first shaped it, their beliefs, their fears, their hopes for the future. Those beliefs slowly become traditions. Traditions become routines, and routines begin to feel natural. So natural that few people pause to question them. The most powerful systems are rarely the loudest ones. They do not announce themselves with force. Instead, they become invisible, quietly accepted as simply the way things are. Hogwarts carries that same quiet design, unity and division living together beneath one roof. Belonging offered, yet boundaries quietly maintained. The question has never been whether such structures exist. Structures are part of every human community. The deeper question is something else. Do the people within those structures remember that they can shape them in return? Belonging is powerful. Labels are powerful. Repetition is powerful. But awareness is powerful too. Once you notice a pattern, it does not disappear, but it also no longer moves unnoticed. That is why the story of Hogwarts continues to linger. Not because of hidden chambers or magical creatures, but because the castle carries a tension that feels quietly true. The fracture between its founders was never fully healed. The sorting never completely stopped. The architecture never dissolved. And yet, within those walls, students continued to surprise the design. They chose differently. They grew beyond the shapes first imagined for them. They expanded the meaning of belonging itself. And that is where the story slowly turns toward us. Because the structures surrounding our own lives may also feel ancient, permanent, unchangeable. But structures are not alive. We are. Stone can endure for centuries, but awareness moves faster. Choice moves further. The castle remains. The question remains. And so does the possibility that every generation may reshape what came before. And so the castle slowly returns to stillness. The great hall grows quiet. The long tables stand empty beneath the enchanted ceiling. Candles drift gently in the air, their golden light growing softer as the night deepens. The banners still hang above the hall, but without the voices of students below them, their rivalries feel distant, almost forgotten. Corridors stretch long and silent through the castle. Stone walls hold centuries of memory. Footsteps fade. Doors close. And the quiet of night settles carefully into every corner. Somewhere upon a high shelf, the sorting hat now rests. Its work for the evening complete. No longer whispering names. No longer deciding futures, only waiting patiently for the next year to begin. Far below the castle, hidden behind layers of stone, the chamber remains sealed, silent, its purpose long spent, its secrets finally at rest. And above those ancient foundations, in towers and dormitories scattered throughout the castle, students sleep, some certain of who they have become, others still wondering quietly, all of them still changing, still growing, still becoming. The structure of the castle stands as it always has, ancient, steady, patient, holding within its walls both belonging and division, expectation and possibility. But perhaps this is the truest image to leave with. Not a battle, not a monster, not even the fracture between the founders, Instead, a school breathing quietly in the night, carrying its long history without fully resolving it, allowing each new generation to walk its corridors and decide for themselves what should remain and what might slowly change. The architecture does not disappear. Traditions do not vanish overnight. Stone holds its shape for a very long time. Yet neither stone nor tradition is ever completely final. Morning will come again. Candles will be lit. Students will gather once more beneath the enchanted ceiling. Another young witch or wizard will step forward, and once again the old hat will lower gently over a mind still full of possibilities. But for one quiet moment, before the word is spoken and before the house is named, there is always a small and peaceful space, a pause where identity has not yet settled, a moment where possibility remains open. The castle has never owned that moment. It only surrounds it. And when the candles burn low and the night grows still, that quiet space is the part that remains untouched. And now the night settles fully over the castle. Hogwarts stands quietly beneath a wide and patient sky. The towers rest in the darkness. Their windows glow faintly like distant lanterns watching over the hills. The arguments that once shaped the school feel far away now. No longer sharp, no longer urgent. Only soft echoes remain, woven gently into the stone. The banners no longer sway with rivalry. The corridors no longer hum with hurried footsteps. Even the oldest walls seem content simply standing in silence, holding the centuries they have quietly witnessed. Somewhere within those walls, new identities are still forming, not loudly, not ceremonially, but in small and private moments. A thought reconsidered, a quiet decision made differently, a boundary stepped across without anyone noticing. The great structures of the castle remain, the towers, the halls, the traditions passed from one year to the next. Yet what moves within them is lighter than stone, more flexible than tradition, and stronger than either. Choice. The candlelight in the great hall grows softer now. The enchanted ceiling fades toward its final stars. If you linger here for just a moment longer, something gentle begins to reveal itself. The true magic of Hogwarts was never only the chamber, never only the sorting, never even the fracture between its founders. It lived somewhere quieter, in the small space between expectation and decision, in the pause before the word is spoken, in the breath before identity settles. That quiet space has always belonged to the student, not the castle. The walls surround it, traditions approach it, history leans toward it, but none of them truly possess it. And so the castle remains what it has always been. Not a finished answer, but a question. One that waits patiently for every generation that walks its halls. a question that quietly asks what the castle will mean next. The candles fade, the corridors grow still, and somewhere within the quiet halls of Hogwarts the story gently closes. The page turns, the lantern dims, and the night continues beyond the castle walls. Soft, quiet, endless.